In this lesson, we're going to complete our neck control by adding a couple of orient joints to our skull so that we could get proper orientation along the x-axis. So with that, let's get started. Alright, so if we open up our scene here, you can see that what we primarily started with is that we moved the joints down, or the controller down, until we got a straight line or a semi-straight line out of our joints. When we do something like this, what we want to do is also stretch the joints out a little bit so that we could get a better feel for how where the character is going to be in pose space. So that seems a bit too far, and this seems about right. So what we're going to do next is just create our joint tool. And then we're going to drop that down. Okay, so now that's dropped in. Let's make sure everything's still oriented. So what we want is we want 3 joints stacked on top of each other along the base. So our bound joints, which is our neck joints, our base control joint, and then its control curve. Now we're going to go to skeleton and add our IK handle to our new joint. And that doesn't look like it took, so let's do it again. Alright, so there it is. Just want to double check. So it definitely was rotate plane solver. So let's create or grab a locator that we have in the scene. And create a pole vector. Grab the orientations out the joint. So rotate X looks fine. And so now what we want to do is we want to grab our neck ori to head control, hit Control G to group it. Let's just put it at about the right spot. Okay, so that looks about right to me. Move it in, freeze the transformations on it. Then we want to grab our neck ori to head group, and we want to constrain our control atlas curve with an orient constraint, X only, apply. So if we look at our scene, this is what the control is doing. It's just simply rotating our neck for us. So the next thing we want to do is, let's go into this group here. To find it, this is called group 2. We're going to orient constrain it. And then parent the IK to the head. Let's follow up by point constraining our pole vector. And then seeing what type of movements we get. Alright, so that's actually looking pretty good. And so this is what we don't want. When we rotate the head, we still want this to be exactly where it is. So what we're going to do is zero everything out, and then we're just going to rotate the head. Let's find our control, see what's rotated. And it looks like everything has been. Let's put this off a little bit further into space. And then optimize our scene. So if we look inside, we could see how there was some rotation simply with the rotation of the head. So we're going to want to put the IK directly on top of our pivot point for our head. So let's undo this. Now let's also do something else. I don't like where the pivot is, so now's the time to break any connections to it. To move it further up the chain. And now let's grab the head and put all the constraints back on. Alright, so now this IK here we're going to point snap it and take off the offset. Then break the connections. Now we'll go back to this group here. Break the connections. Hold W. Well, V. We'll also move it directly behind the neck. Go back now, constrain, orient. Actually, before we orient, let's do a modify, freeze. Now we'll go back and reorient. And let's test it out. All right, almost moving better. Let's see what's going on here. When we move everything straight. So we have an odd curve happening. What we need to do is break the connections so we could zero everything out. Let's go back to a side view so we could finish up our setup. Okay, now that we've seen how it moved, let's go back and reconstrain this. Constrain X, orient. There we go. So the last step is to keep this locked into place. We'll grab it and group it underneath the head. And call the group neck ori group. Alright, so with that, we're done. Just have a little bit of testing to do, making sure everything works properly and as expected. Those rotations play no effect. This rotation takes care of pretty much everything. Alright, so other than that, there's just a little bit of cleanup that's going to be done, but we are ready to go on and start to tackle the rest of the vertebrae in our spine and then our tail. So with that, save your work, and I'll catch you in the next video.